Saturday, July 1st. Who knew? Wowzers. We are like almost halfway through the year. Isn't that cool? So yesterday we were talking about goal setting, and I had mentioned that goal setting is an intellectual process, but goal achieving is a spiritual and science process, right? We're bringing in quantum theory and the spiritual laws. And so part of the challenge we have as the human species is that we're setting goals intellectually, and then we're wanting to achieve goals through intellectual means. And then, and tied with our intellect is, of course, our conscious mind, our conscious thoughts, our thinking mind, and our unconscious thoughts, our unconscious mind, which is where our beliefs are, which, of course, is both limiting beliefs and empowering beliefs. And so if we simply rely on the intellect to make the decisions, number one, and at an unconscious level, let's say we have fear or frustration running, right, at that unconscious beliefs, the result, if not an awareness, the result, of course, will be things that we don't really desire. And so I want to re-mention that, because when we want something different, and I'm just going to use the word want, again, not in the terms of lack, but when we want something different, it forces us to step into a new way of doing and being. And in my meditation this morning, as I was I sat with that one sentence this morning and contemplated that. And because for me, when I read that, I thought that hasn't been my experience. And so as I was sitting there, the gift that I was given, I call them my aha moments, was that in the past, when I've wanted something that I thought was different, but it didn't lead to a new way of being or a new way of doing, it actually wasn't different, although my ego, my thoughts thought it was different. So my groundhog days that I experience are because I'm not actually wanting anything different, but my ego might wrap it up in a different package. So when we talk about the unconscious beliefs, even are a little insidious. And so I have one experience like years ago when in business, and I was doing financially really well, and I wanted to scale the business. And so I hired a very expensive coach. And I'm not sure why I added that, but I guess that's part of the story. I hired a very expensive coach. And within 3 months, the business, I'll use how I felt. The business tanked. And I wasn't able to continue. So 6 months into it, I had to end my agreement. And so I knew that everything was happening for a reason. I've long time have believed that everything happens for me and nothing happens to me, and knew that eventually I would see what that was. Well, today I saw what it was because I didn't hire the coach to help me with something different. And so I thought, well, that was really interesting for me. And so I had sat back and went, okay, well, not going back to the past, but just being in awareness, what would different look like for me now? So it ties back to, what do we really, 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 really want? Like those secret thoughts that we have, those yabbas, right? It's like, if I wanted to create a nomadic life, I have lots of yeah, but I have a cat. Yeah, but I have a house. Yeah, but I have a boyfriend, right? Yeah, but I have no place to, I have nothing to travel in. I guess I could travel in my escape. And so those are my excuses. And so it's going back into, what do we really, 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 really want? And then what excuses or yeah buts do we have? Once the decision would be made, if that's truthfully what I desire, and there's not a hidden desire behind that, or a hidden want behind that, then once the decision's made, things will unfold. So once you make the decision, things will unfold for you. And so the other piece is there's no purpose in growth. There's no purpose in growth if we don't desire something in return. And so, and we talked a little bit about that yesterday from a materialistic perspective, like from a money and a revenue thing. But just in general, there's no purpose in growth if we don't desire something, and I'm going to add different, in return. When we make the decision that we want to show up differently, I can remember it. There's been like 4 really clear instances in my life where I've had the most growth. And each time I made a decision that I was no longer willing to be that woman that was having that experience. And then growth can happen once we make that decision. So from a strategy perspective, when we're setting intentions or setting goals, if we think about like a triangle, and in that triangle we have, and I actually wrote this down so I wouldn't lose it in trance. We have so in the triangle we have theory, we have fantasy, and we have fact, right? And so when we're thinking about this goal, and then the outside part of the triangle is this creative process. And so in order for things to move, right, from into fantasy, into fact, or into imagination, visualization, into fact, first question to ask is, am I able? So ask yourself, are you able? And you might be missing a skill set. But when the deeper question to this is based on the laws, not on your personality, are you able? And based on that, and maybe picking up a few skill sets, all of us would be a hell yes. You may not even have to acquire the skill set, but to hire out the skill set. And the next one is, the question to ask is, are you willing? Are you willing? Which is probably a deeper question. I'm just going to blow my nose. Pardon me. One moment. So the next one is, are you willing? And that can be a tougher one to answer because we don't know the what. Am I willing what? Am I willing to do what? The first time that my mentor asked me, are you willing to do whatever it takes? Like whatever happens, whatever it takes. And I was really honest with him. I said, no, I'm not. And he said, well, until that happens, until you're willing to do whatever it takes, he said, the thing that you desire, Ranchelle, won't unfold. And I was resistant to committing to something that I didn't know what it was. And I was resistant to committing because I was resistant to commitment in general, right? And that was the first time that I realized that I had never really committed to anything other than, at that time, my current husband. And other than that, there wasn't a lot that I was willing to commit to. So as I started to unpack all of what was behind the, am I willing to do whatever it takes? And the answer being no, and unpacking the no, I realized that was housed a lot of incredibly awesome limiting beliefs for me. And so the first one, as I said, being my resistance to commitment. The second one that came up for me with him was I wasn't willing to sacrifice my health. And he said, he used the word God. God would never ask you to sacrifice your health. That's a human being. That was the first time, like years ago, that, at that time I realized that I was sacrificing my health and wellness and sacrificing my relationships because I was trying to prove myself to people, prove my worth, prove my valuableness, value, prove my intelligence, prove my commitment that I really didn't have. Right. So, are you willing? With that often comes faith. And it doesn't even have to be faith in a higher power, but just faith that you will have your back, faith that you can figure stuff out, faith in the unknown. And because we're human beings, right, our amygdala, our brain wants safety and security. And so it's to create your own safety and security in that moment and other following moments. Are you willing, to ask that question or answer that question? Are you willing? And once we understand or accept that we are able through the universal laws, and we might need to develop a skill set, tighten up a skill set, hire out a skill set, and then we answer that we are willing, then we can tap into the divine action, the divine inspired action of, okay, what does this path look like? Not how are you going to do this? Because that's your ego wanting security, wanting to know that everything will be okay. Right. And so I talk to my ego like on a regular basis, reminding my ego that I am safe and secure, and knowing and thanking the ego. Like anytime I know that you're there to step in, and I've got you, you've got me, and I really don't need your presence in this particular situation. Right? It helps me surrender into the divine part of myself, knowing full well that I'm okay from that perspective. Right? And so if you think about whether it's a goal or whether it's an intention, I guess the question that I'm being prodded to ask you is it any different than the ones you've set in the past? And if not, it's not a bad thing, but if not, is there something that within it that could be different, that could guide you in a different way? And so for some of us, that might mean focusing on our purpose and our mission or our vision away from cash flow, because sometimes for some people, focusing on the money does not encourage the money to show up. The money's here. The money to show up into form, because it's already in the formless substance. And then it goes back to I was listening to, I'll bring her in tomorrow. Maybe I might bring her in tomorrow. So I'm just looking for my book. I was listening to a book yesterday on YouTube, and I've listened to this book so many times, and so let me see if I can get the quote, or won't be a quote, but like the essence of what I heard. The human being believes that the emotion of happiness comes from a certain situation, or the emotion of joy right, comes from. And that is the illusion, that it doesn't come. Happiness is an emotion. We can create, we can change our own state around that, but it's attached to something. It's not always, but it's often attached to something. And so one of our opportunities is to be in awareness that when this thing happens, right, I feel happy, but the thing isn't the cause of the happiness. That it looks that way, it appears that way, but it's an effect. And it's an effect because we allow happiness to arise, in the emotion to arise in us. So it's not really the cause. The thing isn't the cause, although it really looks like it. Right. So the money isn't the cause of joy or safety and security, although it'll appear that way. But the cause is actually, right, us, the divine in us. Us, I would say, I'm just going to say us. I'm not even going to separate the two of the conscious and unconscious mind, or I won't separate the personality side of us and the divine side. We are the cause. Our thoughts, our ability to emote, our emotions. But it's tied, it looks like the illusion is that it's tied together. And so her name is Genevieve. And my interpretation of what she was sharing is that be happy with the money, have fun in the experience of the cash flow, and don't feel like it's bad to be happy because there's money there, right? But just know that it is not the cause. And she said, feel the feelings and increase it, like just and every time, hers, it was about money. Every time more money comes into life, expand the joy, expand it, because your personality wants the joy, wants the passion, the magic, the excitement. And if you know in your heart that it's not from the cash flow, but the cash flow expands it, but you know it's not the cause of it, when you really get that, she said, you can utilize that knowledge, that power, to increase the joy factor. I thought it was really interesting. And like I said, I've read this book, I don't know, 10 times. I had not heard it that way, or I had not interpreted it that way. Now, give me another couple of weeks, I might say, no, that's not what it means. But it might. And it might mean that to you and not to me. That's the coolest thing, right? About interpretation, perception, right? And we all have that. So if we take an idea of what we desire and we add the emotion to it, that actually equals imagination or fantasy, is what in this goal setting process. And then we think about the fantasy. We visualize, we imagine what that looks like, right? And that's why vision boards can work really well if you utilize the vision board, meaning you build a vision board and then you use it on a regular basis to meditate with it or use your affirmations or whatever. And so I'll encourage all of you this weekend to like build a story, right? Like write a chapter. Oh, that would be fun. And it doesn't have to be like, 5,000 words. Write a chapter about your life and all areas of your life, like your health and wellness, your relationships, right? Your finances, your career, um, your community, right? Whatever's important to you, write a chapter, right? Wouldn't it be cool if? And write it as if it's happening right now. In the coaching certification, which really is really interesting, that I taught a couple of weeks ago, there's something that's written called the visualization statement. And in our languaging patterns, we have like move towards words and move away from words. And what I noticed was how we often speak in move away from language, meaning we know what we don't want. And so at an unconscious level, we are programming ourselves for what we don't want based on the language that we're using, right? And so an example of that would be, I'm no longer in pain, right? That my brain actually at an unconscious level doesn't understand the concept of no. And so it starts to like, so it's like, I am longer pain. So we can use words like, right, the pain stops now. That would be, right, something like that would work. And so just use that as a simple example, but we often speak in terms of the move away from language. And so I would encourage all of you to just to write down a mini chapter of what your life you want to create. And if it looks the same as before, there's nothing wrong with that. What I would encourage you to do is just, what would be something different that I could add? Or is this really what I want or what I think I want? That's how I started. Is this really what I want or what I think I want? Because it could just be, I think I shared that yesterday with like the nomad, like that sounds like lots of fun when I was driving and I didn't know if my dad was going to make it. And I thought, if he passes, I'm just going to rent an RV and go and travel across Canada. And so, and this is just like from a reflector, when a reflector gets an idea, part of their human design is to wait a minimum of 30 days before they make big life altering decisions like that. And part of what a reflector is to do is to start talking about it as if it's happening so that they can try it on. They can vibrate to it as they think about it, and then they can make the decision whether or not they're really meant to do it or not. And reflectors do this naturally, right? And perhaps maybe you might even know a reflector, like someone who does that and then they don't follow through because they've tried it on by talking about it. They realize, yeah, no, that's not actually what I want. Right? It's a really cool process. And so, yeah, a fantasy about what if this is your life, right, Anne? Or Diane, sorry. Wouldn't that be amazing? That would be so awesome. So awesome. All right. Ah, thank you so much. So much. I appreciate all of you. Today I'm going out on the lake with this beautiful lake near us called Sylvan Lake. So this afternoon I'm going on a tube like to lay my friends a paddleboard. I'm gonna go lay out in the sun. I haven't laid in the sun for years. Yes, I'll wear sunscreen. I'll be careful. I promise. All right, everyone, love you. Have a great day and we'll see you tomorrow. Mwah.